Hello and welcome to The Current Thing with me, Nick Dixon. And today we have an extra special guest. He is the host of the Bulldog Mindset YouTube channel, which has 360,000 subscribers plus. But now he's moved on from that. Well, that was talking about masculinity, dating, money. He interviewed people like Andrew Tate, who you might have heard of back before it was cool. But now he's moved on to talking about things like stoicism and marriage and loads of things that will interest our audience. It is John Sonmez. Thanks so much for doing the show, John.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. It is an honor to be here.
Well, you're very welcome. So, there's so much we could talk about. And in case our audience doesn't know you, though, I thought I'd kick off with your kind of famous transformation. This is a thing you were known for. So we see these transformations on the internet where people just
Right.
lose loads of weight and stuff like that. Yours was one of the best ones that's been seen. You went from overweight computer geek to alpha male Chad. And I just wanted to, if you wouldn't mind just telling that story and how all that came about.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I grew up as kind of a nerdy kid, kind of a dorky, out of shape. I never was really athletic or anything like that. And I was very introverted and shy. I was just scared to talk to a girl. I mean, I didn't have a girlfriend in high school. I didn't even talk to girls. I didn't, even in college, barely. Right. And so, I was basically became a computer programmer and, went down that road, played World of Warcraft. And, one day, what happened is I went to the store to buy some US size 46 pants, which I'm not sure what they are in UK size, but it's big, right? It's really big because my size 44 pants didn't fit me anymore, and that
I think
was
it's
the
also
point.
46 in the UK.
Oh, maybe.
That's
Okay, maybe.
inches.
Yeah.
That's inches, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's oh yeah, that is true. Yeah. So we're on the same imperial system. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but
You're
yeah,
welcome.
it was one of those come to Jesus moments where I had denied that I was fat. I was like, okay, I'm just gaining a little bit of weight, and then I was like, damn, John, you are a fat ass, right? Like it's like there's no question about this now, and I realized kind of in that moment, I was like, not only are you fat, but like you have this delusion in your head that you're this kind of cool, confident guy that somehow it's all going to work. I call it everybody thinks they're going to be a rock star someday. It's almost like this life isn't the real one, but someday I'm going to have that, that awesome life. And it just scared me. It scared me so much that I was like, look, if this is my only shot and this is my only life, and I want to have the kind of life that I want, if I want to have women attracted to me and I want to, make money and live this kind of life and feel good about myself, then I have to start right now. And so I just immediately, I think in the next year, I lost 100 pounds. I started reading books like crazy, just, reading one book a week and running. And I just started really consuming a lot of content on masculinity, started overcoming my fears, learned how to pick up girls and, had some success in that area. And then actually ended up becoming a coach in that area and really developed the Bulldog mindset. A lot of this was also influenced by Stoic philosophy, because I realized that like that was a life philosophy that made the most sense. And yeah, I just had this amazing transformation within 5 years. I went from, I won't say broke, but I was making okay money to multimillionaire. From fat and lazy to ripped and jacked, running marathons, and from really not doing well with women to having a lot of different options and really just something that a life that I never thought that I would ever live.
You managed to like transform your whole life, which was pretty amazing. And what my question about that is how far can we change our personality? Because I was bored the other day or miserable or something. I found myself doing online personality tests, which is a
Oh
thing
yeah.
I do sometimes. I got nothing else to do, and I found that I did one that was from Ty Lopez actually, and
Oh,
I got anxiety 100, and it was
oh
out of
shoot.
100. So
Yeah.
that's I'm not an expert. It strikes me as a touch high. And then I got organization 100,
Okay.
perfectionism 100, conscientiousness 95. And I was like, of course, I wanted it to be 100 because I'm a perfectionist. So I thought, imagine having that personality. Like, what a nightmare. And it made me think, like, how locked in our personalities are we? Because it looks like you made a massive change.
Yeah. I don't think they're locked in at all. I think that we apply labels to things, and I think it's harmful to apply labels. So for example, I've always railed against the introvert extrovert thing. I don't believe in such a thing as introversion and extroversion. I believe that certain people will exhibit those qualities in certain situations. So for example, when I was in my geeky days, I used to love playing Magic the Gathering, right? I still would love to do that. I need to go back and do that again because it's so much fun. But the card game, the trading card game, and in that nerdy environment of all introverted guys, the guy that was really good at Magic the Gathering, the guy that was winning all the tournaments, he acted like an extroverted alpha male in that environment, right? He was loud and obnoxious and in your face and all these things. And so it's like it's contextual, right? And so, but what happens is we apply labels to ourselves and we think I'm anxious, I'm shy, I'm whatever it is. We say I am those things, and that becomes our identity. And identity is the most powerful force in the universe. Whatever you believe that you are as your identity, that is what you will be. And so the trick is to change that identity, right? And that's what can change the personality. In fact, Benjamin Hardy wrote a really good book called "Personality Isn't Permanent." That's a good read for that subject. But I think fundamentally it comes down to identity, right? And another good book on that subject, kind of the pioneer book on that subject, was uh, by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, Psycho-Cybernetics. And he was a plastic surgeon, and he found that when he changed some people's faces, it changed their personality for the better. Because someone said the reason why I have no confidence is because my nose is too big. So he fixed their nose, and now they have confidence, right? But some other people, he would do plastic surgery on them, and he would fix the thing that they thought was wrong with them, and it wouldn't change anything. And what he realized was that it was not the actual physical appearance. It wasn't any of those things. It was the self image, what they thought of themselves, which is really identity. Right. And so I think in order to really change your personality, you have to first change your identity.
Hmm. That's interesting. I've tried to read Psycho-Cybernetics twice. It doesn't really make sense to me. That fundamental point made sense to me. But there's a lot of kind of, after that, it gets a bit woo-woo, and I can't really
Yeah.
see how to apply it practically. But that is an interesting point. My friend told me the other day that his hair transplant changed his life, and that he
Mm.
might not have even got married without it and wouldn't have got his wife. I couldn't believe it. I was like, I was hoping he'd just say, nah, it's all internal. Don't worry about your hair. He said, no, it's life-changing. Pay the money.
But but see, I still would make the argument that it is internal. I'll give you another example. One of my coaching clients just yesterday, right? He came to San Diego and he was struggling with women, right? Just like, I mean, he would go on dates and stuff, but he couldn't close a deal and women wouldn't call him back and stuff. And we went for a run. We spent a couple days together, and I just gave him like a different shift in mindset, not even tactics, just like this is how things are and this is why you need to do things this way. And just yesterday I was talking to him and he's like it's crazy now. He's like, it's like I absorbed your personality, like your skills with women, and now I'm this master of it. And like, how could I do this in a couple days? And then he was saying that I think though, he's like, I think maybe it's because I my physique, right? I've changed, I've dropped some weight and I've gained some muscle, and I was like, you see, the thing is, like, you think it's because of your physique, but have you ever, like, if a woman gains 10 pounds or lose 10 pounds, does it really change her attractiveness that much? No. And when women are less visual than men, I said, what it is though, is that part of it is because you believe that your physique is so good that you deserve these women. You're acting that way. And so, maybe the hair transplant, I'm not saying that physical appearances don't matter. And I'm not saying that the hair transplant doesn't matter, at all. But what I'm saying is that probably your friend felt so much confidence from having the hair and having people compliment him on the hair and knowing that he just presented himself in such a way that made him more successful. I think there's a huge element to that.
Okay, so the options are hair transplant or spend a few days with John running. They're probably both expensive, I feel like. I feel like I'm not sure which is the cheaper option, especially if
Which
I've
one
got to go to
lasts
San
longer?
Diego. Yeah, yeah. I will try one of those. But so I've got to address something now, just because you're talking about this stuff, because this is so normal to you. This is what you do. But for
Right.
our audience, I have to address what they might be thinking, which is, hang on, why is life all about getting loads of girls and stuff? Because some of
Yeah.
our audience are kind of trad. They're kind of into like,
Oh yeah.
don't go and sleep around, and
Yeah.
get married to the first girl you meet forever, and that's it. So should a man go out with lots of girls, or should he just be trad and stay with the first one he meets and just do that way? It's kind of Pearl versus Ben Shapiro or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, my views are more along the traditional line, right? My political view is libertarian, the lowercase L, not the capital L. And I would say that more like, so for example, right? I'm married to a wonderful woman, happily married, and I think that's wonderful. And however, I did do pickup and I did learn skills with women, and I think that was valuable. Now, I don't think you need to necessarily go around and sleep with a lot of women if you don't want to do that, but I do think that you do need to learn how to pick up girls. I think you need to learn game. You need to learn those skills for the simple reason that you need to have options so that you can make a choice, because a choice without options is not a choice at all. And so the thing that I would take offense with is if a man says, I'm just going to marry the first woman I meet. That is a bad problem. And that's where so many of these nasty divorces come from, and men in very bad situations. And believe me, take it from me, I did go through a divorce, and I was that guy. I was a guy that married the first girl that, that would have sex with me. And I was like, it's not probably the best choice, but it's because I didn't have options. But what I think is that, if you have a moral stance and you're like, I don't want to sleep with a lot of women, I don't believe in that culture, and that's totally fine. But at least learn how to interact with women, how to get in a position where you could. And then now you can filter. Now you can actually have standards as a man, which you need to have, and say, look, this is what I'm looking for, and this woman doesn't meet it. And now you can find a much better woman that's suited to you, rather than what most guys do. Honestly, the biggest mistake most guys make that completely ruins their life is that they end up marrying or getting into long-term commitment with the first girl that they really have anything with, because they don't feel like they have other options.
Okay. And so maybe we'll get into that more. But I suddenly wanted to ask you, one of the things I got in trouble for with my audience, or some of my audience, is being quite an Andrew Tate supporter,
Ah,
except like maybe on Israel Palestine, but before that. And Tate follows me on Twitter, and we've now X, and we've had a few messages and stuff. And I've met him when I was in my job at GB News, and I tend to be quite loyal once I like someone, so I
yeah.
kind of stick with them. But some people said to me, Nick, how can you support Tate? He's this, he's that. He wants to sleep around and demean women and blah blah, and he's not conservative. He's definitely not. He's not Christian. His brother is, who also follows me, Tristan, but he's not. But what's your view on Tate, and what was your experience of interviewing him? I think once or even twice, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, great question. I love that you're not avoiding the sensitive subjects. So okay, so and this is something that I'll say, like I would say this to Andrew's face, right? So I will never talk about something that I wouldn't say to their face. So I like Andrew as a person. All right. I agree with a lot of the things that he said. I think that a lot of the things that he said just make a lot of sense, right? I when I interviewed him on my channel, it was one of the best interviews I had. Like we just agreed on so many points. We just, so many of these points of have you I'm sure you've seen the interview,
Yeah,
right? Or
yeah.
yeah. And I just felt like it was right on. Like we were like, yeah, this is how men need to change, and this is what it means to take responsibility for yourself. And like all those things I agree with him on. I do feel like he's made some missteps, right? And I'll say this is the biggest issue that I have. And like I said, I would say it to his face, and I'm happy to. I still consider him to be a friend of mine. All right, so I haven't talked to him in a while, but when he got canceled, right, or depersoned, really, that's what it really was, right? And that was unfair. And he was misrepresented. Totally true. He made a big apology explanation video, and he was like, "Look, he did this very long explanation. Like, I have you seen that? I'm sure you've
Yeah,
seen that
yeah.
too,
I
right?"
see everything
And he
live
talked
on the
about
internet.
how it was like he shouldn't have used his position. He should have been more careful, and then and in the future he'll be more careful at what he says, and all these things, and sincere. And I even showed it to people that were against Andrew Tate. I said, look, I know him personally. I've talked to him multiple times, interviewed him on my channel. I believe this guy is sincere, right? And I believe that he's been misrepresented. And then as soon as he got his X account back, I was like, man, like he just started going off and saying all kinds of stuff. And I was like, that's not like, it's not in alignment with what he said there, right? Which again, doesn't mean I think a lot of people are like, you have to either love or hate someone. I can say I like the guy, and I can say I don't agree with that course of action, because he kind of screwed himself over, right? And he paid the penalty for it, because look, at that point, he had his Hustler University or whatever. He was making 10, $20 million a month. All he had to do was just quietly exit the scene, take his money, and not draw attention to himself, because he now became a big target, and the people who could attack him had nothing. They didn't have anything at risk, where he had this huge thing at risk. And so what ended up happening, I think, is that because he made himself a target, then people took action against him, and then he went back on what he said. So I think that's the kind of contention that I have with him. And then I would say also that a lot of the guys that follow Andrew Tate that are really hardcore, which I know a person can't control that, because the same exists with some Peterson followers as well, even though I love what Peterson has to say as well, is that they are not learning the right message. And so they are becoming radicalized without the common sense and the, I would say, self responsibility that Andrew Tate has, because he's a person who does have self responsibility and understands this. Yet, some of the messaging and the way that it's put out is encouraging, I think, a lot of guys that don't have all the information to think that they do, right? If you know Andrew Tate, and I know that you do to a degree, you know that he respects women. He does not condone abusing women. However, many of the guys that are uh, very, let's say, religious followers of him don't believe that because they didn't get that part of the message. Anyway,
Okay,
that's my
so
stance.
fair enough. Very honest answer. But what do you mean by he came back on X and should have just exited the scene? Because one, wouldn't he say, "Well, I'm being honest and bold," whereas most rich people just disappear. They're behind the scenes. They're safe. The difference with me is I'm out in front of the scenes. And then the second point is you say he went back on what he said. What post was he doing that went back on what he said? Because I've not really noticed. I think he's just had the same as he's always been.
Well, I mean, he said in the video, and it's been a while since I seen that video, that he should have used his position, and he was going to use his position with more care and be more careful to monitor closely everything that he says to make sure it's not misconstrued and that he doesn't cause unnecessary offense, right? I'm paraphrasing, but it was essentially that. And then I felt like when he got his account back, well, example, let's look at the pizza incident that got him arrested in Romania, right? So the pizza box thing, because he started this feud with what's her name, Greta.
Greta Thunberg.
Right. And that was unnecessary to do that. And it was not in alignment with that video, with the tone of that video, right? If you watch that video and then you watch his actions with that, and again, he's not a perfect man. I'm not a perfect man. I've made countless mistakes on social media. So I'm not judging him to say that, oh, he's so horrible. I'm just saying that those things didn't line up. And that was something that made me start to say, I'm not liking what I'm seeing here with with his resurgence on social media. But again, it's my opinion. It's like I respect that someone would disagree and say no, it's fine, and I do respect a person for saying the things that need to be said. However, again, like I did agree with his video in the sense that when you have that much clout, carefully weighing the words in a persuasive way that is not going to necessarily rub people the wrong way just to rile them up is probably a good tactical move, right? To have a little bit more tact. And I think that's what has been lacking, to be honest.
Interesting. Well, one point of clarification I just have to say is that the pizza box thing, I think that was a rumor. It was like an easy
Yeah.
story that he attacked Greta and then he got arrested because of pizza box. I don't think it really was
I
that. They
don't
were
think,
already
yeah.
looking at him for ages. So I know
Yeah.
what you mean. It certainly drew attention to him, but it wasn't strictly the reason. That was just a thing that the mainstream media wanted to say to try and
Yeah.
humiliate him. So that one point I have to say. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, fair enough. You're entitled to your opinion. I mean, yeah, I don't agree with him on everything. That's the other thing. You've got to agree with everyone on everything now. I mean, I get
I
messages
know.
about what Tate says. Why do I get
Yeah.
messages about what he says? It's
Right.
so weird. Like, how do you feel about this then? He's now saying this. It's like, you want me to control everything Andrew Tate says in the future, not just, if I say, oh, I like Tate, it's like, well, now he said this about Israel. What do you think about that, Nick? I was like, well, he has a different opinion on, yeah, fine. It's
Yeah.
kind of pathetic. We've got to have the same opinion on everything across the board.
It's ridiculous today. Like the political culture today has devolved to that. Like there's no debate anymore. There's no discussion. There's no advancement of ideas, because if you don't toe the line on whatever party, whether it be political or social, that you're supposed to, right? If you wrong think or wrong speak, you're excommunicated from the party. It's so crazy. And I've been getting backlash. I did a video on my channel where I was like, everybody hates me because I'm like, I can empathize with the plight of men. However, I can also empathize with the plight of women as well. And so when I'm talking to men and I'm saying like, watch out for these kind of things that women might do and these behaviors, and I'm talking against the liberal agenda and these things, guys are like, yeah, cheer it on. But then when I say to men like, now also look, what you're doing, you need to fix some of your stuff here. guys get all upset, right? And it's the same thing with women, right? If I'm saying all the things that women want to hear, they love that. But then as soon as I say, well, maybe you shouldn't be out partying, and maybe you shouldn't sleep with a guy on the first date, now they're all upset about that. So it's like, if you don't toe the line, if you have a difference of opinion and have original ideas that differ from the standard model, no one has, I feel like, patience for that anymore. And so we don't have as many productive discussions and debates that could actually move things forward.
Yeah. So would you say you've become? I mean, I think the phrase is purple pilled, but you've moved from being like talking about masculinity and men. Maybe you were red pilled. I don't know if you'd have called yourself that. There's all these different terms, and now you've sort of, I don't know if you've softened up maybe a bit. You're talking. You actually got married. I mean, I think it's good. I mean, you've got married. You seem happy with your marriage. That's great.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's good. But in the world we're in, that'll lead you to be like, oh, John's soft now because now he cares about the woman's perspective, and maybe you've sort of become a cuck or something. I don't know what the term would be, but
Yeah. Yeah.
you because you've gone through your own evolution, like Tate, or like you think Tate had done, and then you feel he betrayed that. But you've gone through a big change. Or what can you say about that change? Because now you've moved on from your Bulldog Mindset channel, where I mean, 360,000 subscribers, pretty cool. But you've gone, now I'm over that now. Now you're talking about marriage with your wife, and you've sort of moved on to a new phase.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like to say that I don't think my views fundamentally changed, right? I was probably one of the founders of the red pill kind of philosophy and ideas before it went crazy, right? So the idea behind red pill, right? I was chatting with Rollo Tomasi before he was even on video, like getting him to come on video, right, and talk about these things, because the original idea of the red pill was that, just like the Matrix, you're just supposed to see what the real world is, right? And not be angry and not be jaded or bitter about it, right? So it's like, look, the red pill, the idea was exposing some of the things about female nature, right? So women are hypergamous. They want to have a man that is of higher value than them. Okay, it's true. Like, now we know this thing, right? Women don't like nice guys. They like more drawn to bad boys, or dominant male behavior, right? What you call alpha male, and things like that. And so we learned all these kind of things, right, about maybe how women's sexuality, how they might have a short-term mating goal and a long-term mating goal, and how to understand these things. And I think a lot of the guys that were originally involved in kind of the red pill movement, they took this as if they were taking notes, right? They're like, oh, that's interesting. I've been playing a game and I didn't know what the rules were, and that sucked. But now I'm learning what the rules are, and I'm happy about this. Let me take some notes. Let me improve my game, and now I can use this information to better my life and to get somewhere, right? Whereas I think what started to happen was the red pill turned into this red pill rage. It morphed into this thing where a lot of the creators on YouTube, again, I departed from the quote manosphere, because it just became bickering girls, just ridiculousness of making memes of each other, and like just such petty stuff. Is that I was like, a lot of these guys, they started to realize that the way to get an audience was to say controversial shit about women and to bash women, because that's what guys, it's drama, right? And guys are like, oh yeah, screw them, right? That is always going to, the Jerry Springer effect, right? You look at, Fresh and Fit podcast, again, no offense to those guys, I helped them out to get started at the beginning, and I consider them both to be friends of mine, but it's a Jerry Springer show, right? That's what it is, right? And so what happened was the red pill, because of that, and partially because of the algorithm, it morphed into this women hating ridiculousness, and I don't really want to have any part in that. So I'd say fundamentally my views haven't changed, right? I've always been for the idea of respecting women but understanding their nature, uh, but but I am making more of an emphasis now on the softer side of things, and more on, and more relation. Like, I was doing a lot of kind of pickup content and game content, because that was what I was doing, right? So I was teaching what I was doing, but my fundamental views haven't changed on that. But now that I'm married, I'm doing more of the relationship, and helping guys understand how to be a masculine man in a relationship, which I think is perhaps the most needed skill, because a lot of guys learn how to pick up girls and then they get a girl, just like in the book The Game, if you remember, what's the name,
Neil
uh,
Strauss.
yeah, Neil, or oh no, I think, was it Neil that got the girl? No, Mystery got the girl, and then he went crazy and didn't know how to handle a girl once he got a
All
girl.
right.
But yeah, so I think that is really fundamental, and I think that's fundamental to the building blocks of society, right? Again, speaking to the trad guys, a strong family and strong family values comes from the leadership of a man. So what I'm trying to do now with like the podcast with my wife, Better Than Perfect podcast, in showing our relationship and talking about these things, is I'm trying to get men to step up as leaders in the relationship and to assume the authority in the relationship, and for both men and women to understand that masculine and feminine element is very, very important for the sexual polarity, but also just for family and for the units, for society in general, is that a man should be leading. But in order for a man to lead, it's not like the 1950s. And a lot of guys fantasize and want it to be the 1950s. But the problem with the 1950s was that the man led and the woman had to respect him, not because he was a respectable man, but because he had a job and because she had to depend on him. Today, as a man in a relationship with a woman, the way to get a woman to submit to you and respect you is to be the man, is to step up, to actually be a trustworthy man worthy of respect and leadership, and to understand how to interact with a woman in a way where you have a spine, you have a backbone, you are able to insist on being the authority in the relationship, but are still a loving and kind person who takes good care of her and provides her the emotional support that the feminine needs. So, throughout the whole thing, I think if you go back through all my videos, even in the quote red pill days, you'll hear me say repeatedly that the greatest gift that a man can give to this world is love. And I still believe that. I've always believed that. And that is something that I don't think I'll ever change on.
Okay, very interesting answer. Have to say, when I hate women, it's not for clout. It's totally authentic. So just want to get that out there in case
Nice.
anyone thinks I hate to think
I love it.
people think, oh, he's just doing it for clout. No, no, it's just genuine. So you said there something fairly controversial. You said make a woman submit to a man. What did
Mm.
that mean? Because that sounded like, some people will like that, but like, yes, that's how it should be. And our Christian fans, hardcore Christian fans might like it, but other people are like, oh, how dare you? So what do you mean by that?
Like I said, everybody hates me. I'll piss off everybody, but I like to say I do it because I'm giving the actual real truth without conforming to an ideology, right? So here's where the Christian guys aren't going to like me. They're going to like that I'm saying that a woman should submit to her husband, but not by the authority of God, because that's a really bad reason to submit. Okay, a woman should submit to a man because she trusts the man and believes in his leadership and his judgment over hers, that she believes that he can do a better job of leading her life than she can. And that's a tall order, right? But that's what I'm calling men to be. And if you can be that man, you will have many options among women, and you will have a stable marriage, and you will have a woman who devotes herself to you. But it is a challenging thing to be that, because it's not just about being strong and tough and dominant, right? You cannot dominate a woman into submission. That's not going to work. Okay, uh, what you have to do is you have to inspire her to it, right? And you have to have a standard, right? I tell guys all the time, when a woman asks for commitment in a relationship, that's when you have the talk, and that's when you say, hey, you know, you never should try to get commitment from a woman. That's her job, right? She asks for commitment, and you say, look, yeah, I'm the captain of this ship, right? And I'm a good captain. I will take care of my crew first, right? I will make sure that that I am 100% responsible for whatever happens. If you do something, it's my responsibility. I take full responsibility, because if I'm going to have full authority, I'm going to have full responsibility. I will put your needs before my needs. However, I will always be the captain of the ship. And if you're not cool with that, I'm not angry. No problem. But you can't be on the ship, right? And anytime that you're not cool with that, you're gonna have to get off of the ship, because I will always be the captain of my ship, and that's how it goes, right? And so if you trust me and you trust that I will do a good job of taking care of you, and that I am the best man for the job of captaining the ship, then let's do this. If not, and this way it's clear up front, and this way a woman is making a choice to submit to you. It's not something that's forced, right? Again, it's not something that's biblical, that it's like, well, you must submit to me because I'm your husband and God says so. While I'm not knocking religious people, and it's fine to have the religious views, even in spite of that, you should still be the man that a woman would want to submit to, because she says, I enjoy. And deep in most women's hearts, they would like to submit. They would like to, because a woman cannot be in her feminine unless she is able to fully submit herself to a man, to a man's leadership. And so she will have to be masculine. And that's why so many women in relationships wear the pants, and they act masculine, and they have all of these masculine traits that we see in society today. And we say, why are women so much like men? And it's because it takes a masculine man that a woman trusts and provides safety for her to let down her guard and to allow her feminine to come out. So that's what I mean by submit. And I do think I think it's essential for a relationship to succeed. I don't think you're going to have a male female masculine feminine relationship if the woman does not willingly submit to the man.
Interesting. Certainly going to annoy some female listeners, but what about the claim that can't be done anymore because of divorce laws? It's quite a popular claim in the red pill world. That, I mean, basically, divorce now marriage doesn't mean anything, is the claim, because, well, you can get out of it. There's no fault divorce now. I think in the UK, in other countries, which means you can just leave at any point. You don't even have to have a reason. The woman's actually incentivized to get out. Some people argue you're in a contract where someone's incentivized to get out because they'll get half the money, they'll get custody of the kids, which is another complication.
Right.
So people say marriage. Some people marry in the church separately, and that means something to them, but the actual state marriage doesn't mean anything. So they might say to you, you can't have that ideal, even if people hate that ideal. But let's say they like that ideal, you can't even have it with modern divorce laws.
It's that's so much ridiculous garbage that like that just gets propagated on, because it's just fear mongering. It's absolutely ridiculous. Look, take it from me. I'm a man who went through a divorce, okay, and lost half my shit, lost millions of dollars. Am I spiteful and angry? I got married again because I am willing to take that risk. And the thing about it is, I take responsibility for my mistake in both my choice when I first got married, and also my behavior as a man in that relationship. And she didn't walk out on me. I, uh, for full disclosure, I cheated on her. Right. And I made videos talking about this. And there was some reasons why I felt like I was in an abusive relationship, and it doesn't justify it, but I'm fully transparent. So I will say, I can admit my mistakes. However, I'm just saying that as a frame of reference to understand that I have been through it, and divorce is probably the worst possible thing you can go through in your life. I will tell you that, right up front. So you should avoid it at all costs. However, you don't just, as a man, you don't just avoid things because they're risky. For example, with that same argument, I would say I should never get into a business deal with anyone, because they could, everyone knows if you get into a business deal with someone, especially a 50-50 partnership, they can just decide they don't want to work anymore. And they still own 50% of the business, and then you have to work and they do nothing. You have to trust them 100%, right? And it can be really nasty. I've seen a lot of nasty business partnerships dissolve, right? It's a really risky endeavor. Anytime that you make a contractual agreement with someone, you have to do it based on trust. But what I will say is that a man who, one, vets women carefully, which, again, this is why I said have options and have a standard. And if you have the talk with the woman, the captain of the ship talk, when she asks for commitment, and she's on board with that, and she thinks it highly enough of you to say, yeah, I will accept your leadership and your authority as a man, because I want to that. I want to have those things, and want to have that. Then the likelihood of her screwing you over for some money or divorce, like, is very slim. So the first is filter. The second thing is how you show up as a man in a relationship, right? If you're the kind of man who is a strong man, who had options, who has a backbone, who's not a yes man and a people pleaser, and then also you treat a woman right. And when I say treat a woman right, I don't mean just make money and, like, and pay for the bills and all that stuff. That's the minimum, right? You should financially support her, which, again, a lot of guys disagree with that, but that is part of having the authority and responsibility. But if you can if you can emotionally validate her, make her feel safe with her emotions, which is extremely hard to do as a man, because we're logical, women are emotional. There's a whole, we could talk about that for hours. There's a really good book on the subject called The Masculine in Relationship by G.S. Youngblood, which I'd recommend that all men in relationships read. Another one is The Way the Superior Man by David Tate. But The Masculine Relationship is probably the best relationship book that for men. But my point is that if you understand these things and you can really show up as masculine in the relationship and really make a woman feel loved and safe, she will be so loyal to you. She will do anything for you. There won't be any dead bedroom. She will desire you sexually throughout your marriage. She will worship the ground you walk on, and trust, and you won't have a problem. Like this fear mongering, and believe me, I coach men. I've been coaching men for 10 years. I coach a lot of guys that are divorced, going through divorces, on the edge of divorce, all all of the spectrum, right? And I have seen it, and I have heard horror stories from divorces, like horror stories, believe me. But every single time when I have an honest talk with that man, and we talk about how he showed up in the relationship, always there's it was lacking. It was, you know what I mean? And a lot of guys don't want to admit this, and I understand it, because I know this, because I did not show up as a man in my prior relationship as I should have, even though I was a really good guy. I treated her nice. I was very kind, very, all those things. But there is a huge amount of education that needs to be given to men to understand how you actually treat a woman in a relationship. And if you get that right, I promise you, again, I've been coaching guys for a long time, and I promise you that a woman will, she will think you are the best thing that has ever happened to her in the entire world. Women build their lives around a man, and they want to. Men build their lives around their purpose and mission in life. Women build their lives around a man. And that is why relationship is so important to women. And again, I don't mean to be a woman sympathizer and, get all the guys angry that, it's like, you don't understand the plight of men. I do understand the plight of men. I was talking about that on the podcast today. But you really have to understand, if you understand the psychology of women and how important relationship is to them, and how important it is for them to be able to feel safe and to express their femininity, then you will understand that the devotion of a woman that feels safe and secure by a masculine man in a relationship is way more than you could ever imagine. It's crazy. So I know a lot of guys won't believe me in saying all this stuff, and I get that, and I understand that, because I doubted these things. But as I gained some knowledge of this and understood this and started coaching guys on this and seeing this in people's lives and my own life, it totally changed my viewpoint on this, and that's why I think it's such a valuable message that many men are not getting.
All right, very interesting. I've got loads of questions about that. I mean, I can't remember if it was you or Matt Walsh that said this, but that thing you've just said there about why shouldn't there be risk? It may have been Matt Walsh. He was saying, what is it that makes you think a man shouldn't take risks? So, people say, well, marriage is a big risk. And the answer is kind of yes. It's kind of like the
Right.
meme, Chad meme. Yes, correct. And then you're saying a business partnership's a risk. I was speaking to a guy the other night who went into a business partnership with two guys. They didn't do any work, and he was getting
Yeah.
92% of the clients. And he was a lawyer. In the end, he had to go in at the weekend and grab all his files and set up a new firm before they could stop him and all this kind of stuff. And that's just how it is sometimes. And so business is a risk, marriage is a risk. Then again, someone like Pearl, I mean, I'm starting to wish I'd reread all Pearl's ex posts because she's great on all this stuff, but she'll come back and say something like, well, women aren't virgins. It can get very online, this stuff. I mean, if I say this to the
Yeah.
men in my football team who are just normal blokes with 2 or 3 kids, they would think this is all insane. But in
Right.
the
Exactly.
online world,
Yeah.
the rebuke to that is, well, women aren't, they're upholding their side of the bargain by they're sleeping around, blah blah, or maybe they. Then the other rebuke I have is, or rebuttal is, that economics are forcing. Now you've got some money, so you're okay, but and you've done that yourself, of course. But economics is forcing both people into the workplace, so it's not, what you're saying is not really realistic in most
Right.
cases. What do you say to any of those?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I can address both of those. So, as far as women aren't upholding their part of the bargain, look, I generally agree with that. I look, if I'm talking to women, and when I do, and when I talk about it on my podcast, I say, look, you need to be smart about this. Your highest value is in your 20s. That's your highest sexual marketplace value. So that is the time when you can get commitment from the highest value man. Now, that highest value man, he doesn't want a woman that's going and partying and sleeping with a bunch of guys and giving away what he has to earn for free. It's not a good look. It's not a good plan. Okay. It doesn't, you can't have meaningless sex like men can. Women have a different emotional connection when they have sex. They become harder. They become more masculine through sex. I think through sex makes anyone more masculine, and the more a man has sex, the more masculine he will be, to a degree. It's not good to to overdo that as a man either. But I'm just saying that it is different, and so I do agree with those points. I think that all this OnlyFans and posting your ass on Instagram and all this stuff, and this, kind of woke liberal culture of, women and men are the same and we can do anything in sexual liberation. I don't think that's good. I don't think that's good at all. Okay. However, here's the thing that I think that men fail to realize is that women are influenceable way more than men are. And so the thing about this is that, yeah, this society, the culture, it influences young women a lot more than it does men. And as a man, you need to recognize that, and you need to realize also there's a lot of men that complain about what women do, but believe me, if they were put into a woman's body and they had the assets that she has, they would probably be on OnlyFans. They would probably be less resisting of temptations than a woman does. I mean, again, I'm not saying that a woman should sell her body on OnlyFans. That's prostitution, plain and simple. Okay. However, I am saying that a lot of men that are criticizing women for doing that, right, would do that if they were in that same position, and they would gladly take the $100,000 a month to show their asshole, right? Like, let's be honest about that, right? So what I'm saying is that, like, just be careful about the judgment of that, and realize that women are influenceable. It's a product of society. But the big thing about this to understand is this, and I was just talking about this. I just did a video on this. Women are like a garden or a mirror. There's two analogies I'll give you. One is women are like a garden. So a woman, as a man, how you nurture and plant the seeds in that garden that's a woman will determine what crop you get. Okay. And some guys are planting nagweed, and that's why they're getting nagweed back, right? So if you are able to meet a woman and get in a relationship with a woman, and you have certain views and morality and right thinking, and she's a little bit to the left, or to the, I don't want to say to the left, but whatever. She's a little bit off base there. If you're a strong masculine influence on her, she is much more likely to start to accept your ideologies and beliefs and your influence. She will be influenced by you. I was talking about, every word that you say to a woman impacts her a lot more than what you think that it does. And so the other way to think of this is that, women are like a mirror. A woman reflects back what the man sees. She is a response to the masculine. And so how you show up as a man in a relationship with a woman will determine how she is and her values. Every relationship I've ever been in with a woman, she has adopted her viewpoints to mine more than I've adopted hers. She has adopted a lot of the habits of mine, even the eating set, like all of the things that I do as a man. She has adopted those things, and how I have shown up and treated her, that determines how she grows, right? And so if you nurture a woman in the right way and plant the right seeds, you will get the woman, the wife, the mother that you're looking for. But if you don't, then you're going to get what society is generally, because society is nurturing these women right now, and it's not giving them very good water, or very good seeds to grow, and that's why you're getting this kind of crop. So, but the biggest thing I could say to men is that a woman is like a mirror. A woman is a reflection of the man that she's with. A woman that goes out and parties and does all this stuff, and maybe would even cheat on a guy, you put her with the right man, the man that won't tolerate any of that kind of stuff, that is a respectable man, that has a high respect for himself and has high standards and isn't afraid to talk about those things, and she will be a completely different woman to that man, and a man that treats her right. Like, if you have that combination of things, I'm not talking about being a nice guy, pushover, blue pill simp, or any of that stuff. I'm talking about being, what I would call the man. You will influence the woman. And so that's why I think that, yeah, I'm not trying to say that a woman is not responsible for her actions, but what I am saying is that definitely in a relationship, the man is responsible for the entire relationship. And as a man, you shouldn't be saying, what are women doing? What does she bring to the table? It's a ridiculous question, because the answer is, she is going to respond to what you are doing as a man. That's how women are responsive. And that's how it is. And a lot of women don't like this, and they can complain about it as well, but they know it's true. And everyone, kind of instinctually knows that this is true, that women respond to men. And so that's the thing I would say about that, is that it's not, it's the wrong way of thinking about things when you're worrying about the other thing I would say, one last thing about this, is you're a man. You're the man. It means something to be a man, right? One of the things that we're missing today in society, what's wrong with men today, is that they lack pride, right? I have a friend of mine, he's a Marine, and he said, He said, you know what's the best thing about the Marines? He's like, it's the shittiest branch of the U.S. Armed Forces. We get the shittiest food. We have the shittiest work. People hate us the most, right? It's the roughest, toughest. We get the least of the provisions. And he's like, and that's why I love being a Marine. And that's why I'm proud to be a Marine. And I was like, that's damn right. Because you know what? I hear so many men out there today complaining about how hard it is, how the 20-year-old girl, she can, get flown out to Miami and all these places, and she can walk into a nightclub and get drinks and everything, and she doesn't have to work hard, and she gets all these things, and they're jealous of her, and they're complaining and whining, and they're like, why do I have to pay for dates? Why don't women approach me? Why is all this stuff? And why is it women can do whatever they want and I have to step up as a man? And I'm like, do you not have any fucking pride as a man? You're lacking the pride. Like, what happened to being like, I'm the man? That's why it's harder for me. Yes, it's harder for me. Of course it's harder for me. It should be harder for me. I'm proud that it's harder for me. I had a coaching client of mine, not to go off on a complete tangent, but I used to have my medals on the wall. And I said to him, I was like, look, he was just bitching. He was a bitch fest. He was just complaining about how life was so hard, and like, why can't it be easier? And I took one of the marathon medals off of my wall, and I said, hey, you want this marathon medal? And I said, I can inscribe your name on it. And I was like, we could put a time. What do you want, a 4-hour marathon or 3-hour marathon? And he's like, John, why? I don't understand. What are you saying? I'm like, no, seriously, do you want this? Like, you can hang it up on your wall. And then when people come over, you can say, look, here's my marathon medal, right? You can show your name on it. And he's like, he was getting uncomfortable. Right? And he's like, John, no, I don't want that. And I was like, well, why don't you want it? He's like, well, because I didn't earn it. I didn't run the marathon. It would be weird if I had that. And I was like, so wait a minute. Are you fucking telling me? Are you bitching all this time and complaining about how life is hard? And now you're telling me that you don't want a marathon. You don't want something that you didn't earn, that it would mean nothing if it wasn't hard. Is that what you're telling me now? And you're complaining about your life? Right? What do you actually want? And so I think that's the thing, is that men are complaining, they're whining about that. Yeah, I understand a lot of stuff that Pearl says, and it makes sense. But the thing is, it makes sense to men because it feeds on their weakness, because they're like, yeah, that's right. And they get fired up about that, and they get upset about that. And all of these things, logically, I could justify them and agree with Pearl on all the things. But what's missing is the pride of being a man and realizing that as a man, I think it is harder to be a man. I think it is a position that requires a higher amount of responsibility, because I am a leader. I don't expect a woman to be a leader. I don't expect her to be setting the moral code for life. And I don't expect her to necessarily be doing the right thing. But I expect myself as a man to be doing it. And I expect that a woman that is going to be with me is going to follow my lead. And so that's my very long answer to that.
Great answer, brilliant. This is awesome. This is what we had you on for. So, very interesting about how influenceable a woman is, if that's a word. I had two friends, and I knew this girl. She ended up going out with my other friend. She started with one friend, she ended up with the other friend. So, first friend, she wouldn't have a TV in the house. She would like they wouldn't. She didn't want a TV, and he didn't really want a TV either. But she watched the TV, so he'd say, "Well, come on, let's just get a proper TV." And we're watching it on this laptop. She's like, "No, no, no." She goes out with the other friend. He's got a massive TV on his wall. He's obsessed with TV, like a film student. All he does is watch every single film that comes out. And now she's watching. No complaint. She's watching it. Why? Because she likes the guy more. So now she likes TV. So that does happen. And I'm going to be completely fair for the female listeners. I could be like that as well. My ex-girlfriend was stunning. When she says, Nick, do you want a drink? And I'm trying to, not drink at the time. It's like, maybe I'll go, it would be spontaneous. I'll have a drink. It's like, Nick, you just broke your fucking thing for this girl because she's pretty, you fucking loser. So I've done it as well. So it's not just that way around. But yeah. So I guess you don't. Go on.
And it's not a bad thing. I'm not in any way trying to knock women. I think it's a beautiful thing. I think femininity is a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? And I think more women should embrace their femininity. There's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with wanting a strong man to protect you and to provide safety for you and to want to follow his lead. There is nothing wrong with that at all. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be taken care of and to nurture your feminine side and to be the loving, caring, nurturing woman that you could be. Like there's nothing wrong with that. That's instinctually why women want to be mothers. Like it's there's nothing wrong with that. So it's not a bad thing. We're just different, and that's the thing to understand.
So that comes down to you don't find the perfect woman, you create her, right? That's kind of what you're saying. I think you sort of create her yourself with your behavior. And one thing that's interesting there is that that's an opportunity for men actually, because I remember with talking about my ex-girlfriend, I was obviously, one of us was too mental to keep it going. I don't know who it was. I think both of us. But one thing she did like was that I just tell the truth. And one thing that she liked, and I think why she messaged me again at one point was like, after we'd broken up at one point, was like, because I was on the TV just speaking the truth and had similar opinions to her that she couldn't voice in her industry. And where
Yeah.
this is a big one because she went out with some good-looking guys and things. She was on some elite dating app that's only for good-looking or famous people, and she's like, "These men are awful. They've all taken the vaccine. They're all
Mm.
woke. They're all stupid, and so she
Yeah.
can't go out with them because they're stupid, and she's too
Yeah.
smart and she's too questioning. So she has to find. It's tricky for her because she has to find some weird guy like me and some guy who's going to tell the truth, and that's harder for her to find. And most men are
Mhm.
either they're too stupid or they're too conformist for her. So that was interesting. But that is also an opportunity for men to not be pussies and get
Yeah.
if they don't have to be perfectly good looking, they could be brave instead. How about that? So that's kind of
Exactly.
interesting.
Yeah,
And
and the economic thing, I could quickly
yes,
address that one. I mean, it is tough. Believe me, it is tough in society today. But again, it comes back to the same thing I said about having pride about being a man. And like, I like that it's fucking tough. You should. You should be like, it's tough today to buy a house, to make money today, and then conquer it and do it. And really, like, the thing is, being able to financially provide for a woman is the lowest bar. And I know a lot of guys don't like that, but if you can't support a woman, and it used to be this way, like again, the trad guys are going to be really excited about this, but it used to be this way. Or actually, maybe they won't because now they want to do 50-50. A lot of the trad guys want to do 50-50. And I'm like, are you crazy? Like, but it used to be that way that a man, you know, he needed to make enough money to be able to provide for a woman and a family before he could date my daughter. You know what I mean? That's what it used to be like. How are you going to support my daughter? You know what I mean? That's what it used to be. And it should be that because that's the minimum bar. Because if you can't financially support a woman and a family, you're certainly not going to be able to emotionally support them. And you're certainly not going to, like, and the answer to that is look, that would take a lot of men out of the dating pool. And that would be a good thing, actually, because there's way too many men in the dating pool that are giving girls OnlyFans money and trying to and being desperate. Instead, these men should be working on hustling and trying to make money and trying to build something for themselves. And hey, you don't have to live an extravagant lifestyle. Look, yeah, I know it's hard, but the problem is because you're chasing after the Joneses, right? And if you just were, which would you rather have? Would you rather have a life where you had the latest iPhone and all this stuff, okay, and and maybe you don't have the woman that you want, or she's got to work too, or to have a more simple life where maybe you're not making as much money, you're living in a more simple, you have a more simple car, you don't have the latest iPhone, but you have a woman who can stay home and take care of your kids and loves you and supports you, and you can have that. So you can choose what you want, but I'm just saying too many people are making the compromise and going to double income households, and I understand it. Believe me, I do understand it, but it's not the best choice. And also, if you want to be a leader as a man, how are you going to do that if a woman is paying her way as well? Because what authority do you have? If it's like she's working and you're working, then how are you going to say, well, I'm the man? Like you're not the man in that case. Like she's also the man. So that's why. And again, I know this is like such a thing that's going to ruffle so many people's feathers, and it's an uncomfortable thing to hear. And I know people are like, well, you make money and that's all that, but I did earn the money, and I did choose to make sure that I can support a woman before I got married. And like I said, and I do empathize that it is hard today, but it can be done. And and I think more men should have that viewpoint. And if a lot of men were not out there on dating apps and trying to meet women and wasting their time arguing on the internet about how horrible women were, and then said they were building their business or working on their careers and their education, they would be able to financially support a woman and a family.
yeah. Although it can be tricky if you've left it too late. I mean, if I think about my own situation, I'm getting there. Maybe I could kind of do that soonish, but I am in London, brutal house prices, and you have to earn a huge amount. And you're in America where you can get. I mean, you've earned a lot of money, but even if you hadn't, you can go down to some state in the US and buy really cheap housing. We don't have that. And in the past, it was different. You could have a normal job and you can already support someone. And now, I mean, you've acknowledged that you definitely can't. So that does change the game. And
Yeah.
your answer is just earn more money. It's interesting. I mean, my ex girlfriend said to me, "Well, if you want to just pay for everything, that's different, and then I can just stay at home." But it was because she cancelled on me once because of an acting audition, and I'm like, "What's with these canceling because of acting?" And then I felt like an idiot because she's cancelling me last minute. I'm like, I'm some sort of schmuck. But then she's like, "Well, do you want me to do the acting or you pay for everything?" And she was clocking up how much it would cost me, and it was like going up to like 80 grand, and then it was more, and I was like, hang on, it's just for you. I was like, so it did sound quite expensive. So I was thinking maybe the acting's okay, but so your view is really just that a man just simply has to get there, he has to hustle till he earns enough. I mean, how old is he going to be? Isn't he going to be like? It takes a man often he's 40 or 50 to get enough money, surely. So
Perfect.
what's he going to do? Marry someone he's 50. she's what, 20 something, slept with no one. How does this
Uh,
work? I mean,
well,
he's
I'll
Leonardo
give you
DiCaprio, basically.
so much of the things like it's controversial, but I'll tell you what's honestly the best thing, right? There's so many of these things, but it's like, look, a woman is at her prime as far as like sexual marketplace value. And I'm not saying value as a human. Like people, I need to make this clarification because when I say that women decline in sexual marketplace value, I don't mean that they decline in their value as a human being. That does not decline, right? In fact, a good woman can increase in her value as a human being over time. However, if we're honest, women's age and their beauty does fade over time more rapidly than men, and they're at their prime in their, let's say, mid 20s. Okay, somewhere around there. Most women, right? Not all women, but most women. Okay. um a man in his 20s, nobody cares about a man in his 20s. He's a joke. He's a loser. It doesn't matter even if he's good looking. Sure, but he's still a loser. He's broke. He's not masculine. He doesn't have a physique built. He doesn't, like, a man has to build himself. A woman just has to be born and look pretty, and you know what I mean, not to say that she doesn't do anything, but I'm just saying that, like, it's hers is much more up to genetics, right? A man, in order to become an attractive man, has to build status, and that takes time to do, right? And so what's actually optimal is for a man to say in his 20s, forego dating completely, maybe date a little bit just for fun and just to get some experience, but focus on your physique, on your money, on your mindset, right? And build yourself. If every man in his 20s just focus that entire decade on making money and building himself and hustling and forgot about women for the most part, every single man could be successful in his 30s to make enough money to be able to support a family, right? And the thing about that, what's beautiful about that, is by the time you're in your mid 30s, let's say a man could peak at 35. Some men never peak at all because they never, they just go downhill from their 20s, but you have the potential to do it. And so what's kind of optimal is a man in his 30, like 35, marries a woman who's 25. It's kind of the perfect match. And again, I know that the circumstances don't line up like that. It doesn't have to be exactly that, but I'm just saying that if you look through society and culture, that's kind of how it's always been. It's been about a 10-year age gap. We've only recently had it, closer to the same age. But, if you're honest, most women will prefer an older man anyway, right? And so that's the whole thing, is that it's like, yeah, you might have to wait till you're in your 30s, or maybe 40, but a man in his 30s or even early 40s can get a girl in her late 20s or mid 20s or early 30s, and that will be a better matchup. And the other beautiful thing about that matchup is she's much more likely to accept his authority and leadership because she's much more likely to look up to him because he has more experience in life. And so that dynamic works. So, again, I know that a lot of this stuff, it like ruffles a lot of people's feathers, and they don't like to hear this truth, but to me it just makes sense, even if it's uncomfortable. And I understand that a lot of people are in situations where they can't be in that because, if you're already in your 30s and you haven't built up the money, or if you're already married and you both have to work because you have this house and whatever, I totally understand those things, but you should be moving towards the ideal, even if you can't be at it right now. And that's all I can say about that. It's like, I understand, I can empathize with those things. However, I'm not going to just hold back the truth just because it's convenient or it's going to hurt people's feelings if I say it.
Yeah, and if you happen to have ballsed up your 20s, get a hair transplant, like my friend, and then you can turn back the clock. And
There you
I,
go.
I don't know. I think that's what I'm gonna have to do. I messed up my 20s, didn't do anything. In my 30s, I started doing stand-up comedy, and did it so much that I think that's been the foundation of everything I do now. I have a TV job. I do multiple podcasts, 1 point something million downloads on my podcast. So I've done all right finally but it only started then. It was like hard work. A lot of the work as well, you can't see what it's doing. So if there are young men in their 20s, I agree with you. They should start. You might not even be able to see what it's doing for ages. Maybe you
Right.
will, and maybe you're making money, but maybe you're just sort of building skills for ages. You're not even really,
Mhm.
you just sort of, it looks like you're just toiling in the fields, but actually you are doing something. Is that how it was for you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a little bit different. Like I said, I got married early, really young. Made some mistakes in that area, and then, I mean, I got a job as a software developer, and I wasn't making like great money, but I was making pretty good money. But the one thing that I kind of stumbled into and got lucky was buying real estate. I started buying real estate, I was working my regular job, and I would just save up as much money as I could because I wanted to not have to work someday, and that worked out well for me. Eventually, it became a strategy, and I understood it. But at first, I kind of looked into it because I just didn't want to rent. So I bought a house when I was young, and then I started to realize that the richest people in America, they all made their money from real estate. And so then I was like, okay, this is interesting. And that's, it's funny because actually one of the books that got me into real estate investing was The Art of the Deal by Donald Trump. And I was always a fan from, because he got me started in real estate. So it's like, when it was like, man, this guy's the president now, that's awesome. But but now it's like, but my point is that I kind of lucked into that part, but then I did hustle my ass around 28, started building a business. And if you're willing to work for 5 years at something hard, you'll be successful at it, right? All the guys I coach, I always say like if you're willing to start a business and you're willing to work hard for 5 years and not give up on that thing, I can't guarantee you're going to be successful, but that's usually what it takes, is 5 years of commitment. And if you can do that, you can set yourself up in a very good financial position.
Okay, interesting. What's the biggest recurring problem that men have had who come to you? Because you must have worked with so many men now. You must have certain themes and patterns.
Oh, yeah, that is a good one. What is the biggest recurring theme? Um, I mean, I think that it is their interactions with women. I think it's not even that. It's the self confidence that they lack because of their interactions with women, right? I would say that I have this theory that there's three biggest fears that all men have to face in their life to really feel good about themselves and feel like a man. The first one is the fear of physical violence, right? So you watch a movie and you're like, a war movie, and you're like, would I just run? It's like these guys on the battlefield. It's like, would I just like drop my weapons and run? It's like, would I actually face my mortality or face combat? It's like, could I get punched in the face? Right? It's like, I think there's that. Like, if you feel like you're a coward, you won't feel like a man. Let me put it that way, right? The second one is financial. The fear of not being a self-made man. If you feel like you can't make your own money, if you feel like you can't make your own way in the world, and I don't even think it's getting a paycheck. I think it's just feeling like you can make money, build a business, something like that. Then you're going to feel some way not confident in your masculinity. And then the third one is women. If you feel like you can't go up and talk to a woman, that if you're too afraid to do that, if you're afraid that women aren't going to find you attractive, if you're worried about those things, it's going to eat at your self-esteem. And so I would say that what men come to me is to solve those three problems. And different guys have different orders of what problems they need to solve in those areas, but it's usually those three things. Because I can guarantee you, if a man has those three areas of his life solved, he's going to feel good. He's going to feel like a man. His life is going to be going good. But if he's missing even one of those areas, he's going to feel it in some way. He's going to feel insecure in some way, right? It creates that insecurity. So I think that would be it.
Interesting. I think I've got 2 out of 3, so I'm doing really well. I don't
There
definitely
you
not the
go.
last one, but I could up my fighting skills, but I know I'm not a coward because I remember my friend getting beaten up on the street in Newcastle in the north of England. Very tough. It was a tough town, and he was getting beaten up by loads of these young lads. And I remember jumping in, getting punched in
Nice.
the face, kicking a couple of them out of the way, getting punched, and we got out of there. All I did was create a diversion, just a punching bag. But I remember thinking, I don't even want to jump in here. My mate's getting pummeled, so I have to. So I'm not
Yeah.
a coward. Although these days, with so much knife crime in London, what would I do these days? I don't know. Because these days you just get stabbed. So I don't know anymore.
Yeah, I
Depends where
mean,
you live.
again, obviously making foolish decisions, So, but you've proved, like, that you have done it and that you would step up, that you have stepped up. So you've sort of faced that thing. So I think that, I think that's
Maybe I've
something that
conquered
lives
it.
with you.
Um,
You're
yeah,
not a coward.
you live in LA, don't you? Before you just get shot.
I'm in San Diego, so it's a little bit
Oh,
more hit with a surfboard, but
okay. You can handle that. I don't know how much time you got because there's so many things I wanted to ask you. I've got
oh
maybe I'll
yeah,
ask
no, I
this.
got time. Let's
Okay,
go.
cool. Because okay, maybe I'll ask this one then if you've got more time. I just wanted to know has we've talked about this already, but I just want to check we've covered it. Has feminism sort of ruined things, not just for men but for women? Then has it just basically ruined things for women following feminist ideas? 'Cause a lot of women are now saying this. Louise Perry is a big one. She writes really well. I see a lot of women now saying, "Oh, this is not a good deal for us. We work a crap job. We don't get married. We don't have children or whatever it is. This has not worked out for us. This was a scam." Or at least modern feminism, because early
Yeah,
feminists
modern.
apparently were Christian and they were pro childbirth, and somehow it got into this thing of like being anti everything that benefits women. I don't know how that happened, except for trying to act like a man, basically.
Yeah, and I would agree 100%. You know, the third wave feminism, or whatever you want to call it, the new feminism, it's not about women. It's about women becoming men. That it is literally, they're hating on men, but then they want to be men. And it's sad because, like I said, I think that the problem with that is that, you know, women have been sold you know, a bad bill of goods here, right? Because they're getting all these promises. They're like, okay, you can have sex like a man. That's not true. It's not true. Like, women get more attached, and they are damaged by those things. So you know, again, it doesn't mean that they're irrecoverable. It doesn't mean that you have to be, as a man, like, oh, she has to be a virgin, or even, you know, like the ridiculous judgment on body count is it gets too extreme. Like, that's those things are like, you know, but it is damaging, right? It is damaging. The idea of like going to work and not raising a family. A lot of women have that maternal instinct, and they want to be feminine. They want to be taken care of by a man, right? And that's where they're happiest, right? Do I believe that a woman can be a CEO of a company and do a job, and do a job as good as a man? Yeah, I believe that. Sure, why not? That's fine. There doesn't need to be proven. It's the point is that, look, you know, I could probably be a hairdresser, but you know, I mean, I guess a lot of gay men are hairdressers, but as a straight, you know, man, you know, it's probably not the thing that would light me up as a man, right? Like, I could do the job, right? But I probably wouldn't enjoy it as much as a woman does. And so it's the same thing. It's like when women take on masculine roles, can they do them? Sure, they can do them. Can they do them as good as a man? I mean, in some cases, yes, right? But in some cases, actually, I would say no. To go backtrack a little bit on what I said, because as I think about it, I think that is true as well. But but the point is are they going to be as happy or happiest doing that? Now, some women, yeah, if they want to make that choice, that's fine. But it's being forced down every woman's throat, and they're feeling like that they need to do that. And then men are buying into this because, man, I did this video, one of my videos on the Better Than Perfect podcast, the podcast with my wife. It went viral on TikTok. It's got like 750,000 views, or semi-viral, I guess it's, you know, but it's like, it's one where I'm talking about how men should be financially responsible and should take care of a woman financially. And I expected a big blowback from women on that, right? Instead, I got a big blowback from men on that. Men are like, no, 50-50 is good. Like, she needs to pay her share. I'm like, what? And then I get thousands of comments from women that are like, where can I find a real man? Where can I find a man like that? I would just like to be a stay-at-home wife. And like, that would be so awesome if I could just, and I was like, look, all the thing is changing. I think the pendulum's swinging back the other way, but you can see how bad feminism has wrecked things, right? It's made it so that women aspire to be more masculine, and that makes them less attractive to men and makes them less happy and fulfilled, and it wrecks the family, right? And then it's also made it so that men feel lost, because if women are taking the role of men, then what's the role for men? There's not, young men today are feeling so lost and worthless in society, because that's what society's telling them. You see a movie and it's like, well, you know, Ghostbusters can just be all women now, and it's like, okay, fine, but what's the point? Like, the problem is, like, you know, women, you know, I say that and women are like, what's a big deal? It's just who cares? Like, why are you making a big deal about Ghostbusters being all women? And I'm like, because of the message that it sends to young men, that they're worthless, they're replaced by women, that they don't have any kind of purpose, that there's no action hero anymore, there's no strong male figure, that's a worthless trait. And that's not true. And at women's core, they know that. And that's why, you know, even, you know, for example, my own wife, when I first met her, she was more on the feminist side. That's what all women are in society today. Most women, you know, not all, but most. And you know, if you talk to her before she met me, she'd be like, I would never. And I said, a man should be the leader. She would laugh. She would be like, get the hell out of here. I would never have a man be a leader. I would never submit to a man, or like, you know, or think this, or that's ridiculous, right? She would be like, I'd never quit a job and work and not work and have a man take care of me. I don't need, you know. But after meeting me and us being together, she's completely changed her viewpoint on that, because she now says, like, look, I was being masculine, right? And she says to me, I was forced to be masculine to survive in this world, because how else am I going to survive? It's a masculine world. I have to get a job. I have to work. I have to be hard. I have to take care of myself and protect myself because there's no man to do that for me. And so she said, once I found an actual strong man that I could trust, I let down my masculine side. I embraced my feminine, and it's the best life I've ever had because I get to be a woman, right? And so again, it's not, my being against feminism is not to knock women. It's to support women because I believe that women are wonderful, and that the feminine instinct that's within the woman, that it's not bad compared to the masculine. Like, the masculine is not the superior, the better thing, right? It's like women have been told that being masculine is the best thing, and that men should do less of it. Where the answer is that no, the feminine is beautiful. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. And so, again, now it's kind of swinging back where women are kind of more embracing the femininity, but now men are like, no, no, no. I like the 50-50 thing, right? They're like, yeah, no, I don't need you to submit to me. You carry your own weight. We're equal partners in this thing. And I'm like, guys, no, you don't want that. You don't want that.
Yeah, you could. I can see how you could get used to that because it can sting to pay for the date. But I'm one of those always pay for the date people. Not an expert by any means, but I've noticed just always pay for the date. Don't make a big deal of it. Sometimes
Right.
you find out if it was a date by the reaction to that. Like it was,
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
like, oh yeah, cool. Or if they're like, no, no, what? Then it wasn't a date, but usually it was, and you pay for it, and that's fine. And I'm definitely on that side. But so I agree with you on that, and I like that you're curing feminists, just out there curing feminists, doing the Lord's work, like turning them in. There's always those Reddit memes and stuff that go around, and it's like, I'm dating a Trump fan. Is this okay? And they're always like confused feminists because they actually fancy the Trump guys, and they're like, oh, I don't know who I am anymore. But of course they do, because the other guys are weird feminist freaks who no one likes. Mainly, I mean, it's so weird because men have to pretend to be socially acceptable in many realms. Men have to kind of pretend to be super woke and feminist now. Yeah,
Hmm.
everyone knows that's not what women want, so it's kind of really weird. But there is also a low status thing, just thinking out loud here, of being conservative. It's also kind of like in England anyway, it's sort of kind of weird that you're in this sort of niche conservative scene. That can also be a bit weird. I wouldn't talk about the TV channel that I'm on a date thinking it was cool or something. It wouldn't get me anywhere probably. They either wouldn't know what it was, or they'd think it
Yeah,
was strange, or some of them would like it, a few of them, but I probably already know them because it's a
yeah,
small world. You know what I mean? So I don't know. You just got me thinking about that because you're out here changing women's views. I definitely think it is strange, isn't it? Why men are being? It's a pretty obvious point, but men are being told to be less masculine, and women are told to be more masculine. It's such an obviously perverse thing
yeah.
to do to a culture. Because if it was just everyone being more masculine, you could almost go, okay, the culture's getting
Right.
more masculine. But it's just no, just be the opposite of what you are and what works. I mean, how sick is that? It's an inverted culture that's become decadent. Everyone knows it. I mean, this is Camille Paglia has talked about it a lot. When a culture is becoming decadent and falling apart, like ancient Rome or whatever it is, it tends to get obsessed with transgenderism or androgyny for some weird reason. This just seems to be a historical fact. So we're there
Yeah.
now for weird reasons. But women just do you ever think just it's so easy for women if they just embrace being feminine, even though they've been forced to be masculine to survive, which I totally understand that point. If they can
Yeah.
just be feminine, they can just like cut through the dating world just so easily because if they just aren't like argumentative and aggressive, but they're always,
Right.
but isn't there also a thing where women will do that to test you and see if you're actually the famous shit test, right? They'll test you to see if
Yeah.
you're masculine.
Well, here's another analogy here. Magnets. Okay. So, you know, uh, are you familiar with magnetic induction back in the grade school?
Just
So,
where
you know,
the polarities don't go together if it's south and all that.
well, so induction is actually, you can induce a magnet to switch poles,
Oh
right?
yeah,
So if you take a north-south magnet and take the north end, and then you take a weaker north-south magnet and you bring the two north ends together, what will happen is the weaker magnet, if you force them together, will switch poles. It'll actually swap poles. The magnet won't turn. The polarity of the magnet will actually switch, and it will become a south pole, and it will connect. This is the thing to understand as a man. You have to be the strong masculine magnet, the North Pole. Okay. You go on a date with a feminist woman, like you yourself, right? And you're on a conservative television show. And you unapologetically say you're on the show and talk about it, and you don't blink. You don't flinch at all that she's upset by it, whatever. That's just what you don't argue with her. He doesn't need to argue, but you just stand firm in that. And that's, this is just like I say, when you're giving the captain of the ship speech, right? You will induce that pole. That woman, in the presence of a strong masculine man, she will be induced to her feminine. She will try to come at you masculine, and you will make her feminine. Her feminine will come out. Again, I could say that's exactly what happened with the relationship with my wife when we met, because she was very, very much in her masculine, but I wasn't allowing it. I just was not. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be unapologetic. In fact, our first date was to the man convention, to the Anthony Johnson's thing. And when I was speaking at that event, what did he call that? Whatever it was.
Make women great again. He had
Yeah,
that
yeah.
thing, didn't he? And he had the
So
21 convention and all that. Yeah, yeah. So
yeah, the 21 convention. So
wow.
I took her to that on. Actually, it was a second date. It was a second date. Okay, but I took her to that, right? You know what I mean? And here she is, like, kind of on the liberal side, right? It's like, but I'm unapologetic about it. I'm not embarrassed about it. This is what I'm doing. I'm speaking at this event, right? I mean, she might not agree with the things, but it polarizes. Like that's the thing about it is, so it's yeah, that's the way to look at it is, if you are that strong magnetic pole, you will, and women are looking for that. Believe me, women don't know they're looking for that, but they want to find a strong masculine man that's unapologetic. Just like you said with your ex-girlfriend. Yeah, maybe she shared some of those political views as you, so it seemed more aligned. But it wasn't that she shared the views with you. It was that you weren't afraid to express them, that you were unapologetic, that you were standing out there in your masculinity, and she sensed that masculinity, and that's attractive to women.
All right, I love that you go into this sort of masculinity convention with your on a second date, and she's looking at the program 12-1. Why we all hate hoes, and 12 one Sunday just like we hate women. Women suck. Here's another speech. So this is why women suck, and she's going, "This is interesting, John. Are these your friends?" What was her take on it?
I
Do you
mean,
remember?
she didn't go to the whole, like, we just went to like
Oh,
a drink cocktail hour thing, and met some of the speakers and stuff like that.
okay.
But yeah, it's
But
like,
she wasn't put
that
off. But
whole
she
thing
must
is
have seen
just
your
surface.
YouTube and what you do roughly anyway at some point.
Yeah, but even in my quote red pill days, I would not be embarrassed for a woman to watch what I said, because I never ever have said bad things about women, and I won't, because even though I believe these things, like I said, in hopefully it's come across in this interview, but I love women, and I want the best for women, and I truly, I'm not against women in any way. I'm probably their biggest ally that they don't know. You know what I mean? Because I want them to have the lives that they want, and sometimes they don't even realize it, because this stuff has been pushed down people's throat, and they believe that it's the correct thing. This woke kind of feminism that it's just destructive to everyone.
All right, very cool. Can I just ask you quickly then, because we've got a big Christian following.
Mhm.
You were a Christian when you grew up and you moved away from it. Why was that?
Yeah. So yeah, I actually even taught a Bible study when I was younger. Uh, I would say that, again, I don't care what someone's religious beliefs are, and I respect their religious beliefs. So again, a lot of what I'm saying, I don't mean to bash on anyone's religion or Christians or anything like that. Um, However, for me, what I found as I started studying a lot of Stoic philosophy and Eastern philosophy is that a lot of the things made more sense in the greater scheme of things to me than the limited theology of Christianity, right? So again, I think that a lot of what Christian theology teaches, if you and here's the thing about this as well, right? I'll say this: when I taught a men's Bible study, I remember going through the book of Revelation, right? And I I said, okay, if I'm going to teach this study, we're going to go by this verse by verse, and let's read and see what it says, right? And that's how we did the study. And after I finished that study, the church asked me to not come back, and I said, why? And they said, well, because you're teaching the wrong thing. And I was like, well, what I'm doing is I'm not teaching whatever you think that it says, or that it's been passed down that it says. I'm reading it, and we're going through it, and we're dissecting it, and seeing what it says. And so I think there's a lot of people that are religious and that are steeped in the doctrine that don't actually understand it, that aren't practicing it. And I think that's kind of the one of the issues or contentions that I have, which again, it's not to point any fingers at anyone, but I see that a lot. And the thing about it is, like, some of the reason why conservatives are looked down upon in society is because a large percentage of conservatives are conservative based solely on religion. And that's not a very defensible position. And it doesn't seem like a very intelligent position. Now, again, don't get me wrong here. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with you being Christian. I love you if you're Christian. That's great. I think that's awesome. Okay. I'm not trying to knock you in any way. But what I am saying is that if everything that you say goes back to because God said it and you don't have a good logical argument, a reasonable, rational argument for it, people are not going to respect you very much. Right. And you're going to seem like a zealot, and it's going to seem like you believe these things because God told you or the Bible said so. And again, I'm not saying that you can't believe things because God told you or the Bible said so, but I'm saying that when you present yourself, you have to appeal to an authority that people recognize, that everyone recognizes, which is not God, unfortunately. It is the authority of logic and reason. And so that's why I think a lot of conservatives end up getting a bad name. And I don't have any problem with that. But like I said, for me, those kind of things, and then, I've read thousand books, over 1,000 books, and I've read every religious book, the Quran, the Book of Mormon. I have read some of the Vedas. I mean, it's pretty hard to read all the Vedas, but most of the stuff that's out there. And so just from all that perspective, it didn't seem to me that Christianity was the thing that made the most sense to me. But again, maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, but that's just what I gathered from all of that perspective. And I also grew up in that religion, and it's like, am I lucky enough to have grown up in the correct religion? Like, I don't know, maybe, but I didn't think that was enough reason for me to be Christian, was just because I grew up in it, and that was I got lucky.
Okay, fair enough. Well, we could do hours on Christianity, but I won't because you've got to go at some point. But I do want to ask before you go. I've forgotten to ask about politics at all on it.
Yeah.
Podcast normally very political, but I know it's not your main thing because you kind of avoid it to an extent. I think from some of your videos, but do you care about whether Trump wins? Do you care about the future? Well, obviously you care about the future of the US, but I don't know how much it bothers you. As we record, Texas has just put out some kind of statement that Biden's not protecting their borders, so they're going to do it. And some people feel like, is this the start of something? Will Texas secede? Will there be civil war? Maybe not. But the point is, we're in very unstable times. You've got a former president who they're using the legal system against to try and stop him running. Some people say Trump will be assassinated. These are crazy times, obviously. So, how much does this stuff impact your life?
Well, I mean, as I said before, like, my political views is libertarian with a lowercase l. So, I believe three things fundamentally: that that you have that no one should that you have a right to your property, right? No one should be able to take that from you. You have a right to your labor. No one should be able to put you under slavery or make you work for them. And that you have a right to your personal safety, that so no one should be able to harm you physically. And everything else, I believe, is based on those three principles. Anything that violates those three principles, for example, taxation, would be a violation of the principle because it's stealing. It's taking a property that I did not give. And then it could also further violate the principle because if you don't give the money, then you're going to go to jail. Or you could be physically hurt. So that's kind of where my basic framework. But as far as like the political landscape, I mean, the truth is, practicing Stoic philosophy, I try to stay out of it as much as possible in terms of, like, I know what's going on, I have opinions on it, but I try to limit that as much because I don't want the outside world to influence my internal. And in reality, I don't have any control over what's going to happen. Like, I could want Trump to win or Biden. It doesn't matter what I want, because even if I vote, it still doesn't matter, right? So it's like, am I going to waste my energy and my effort on something that doesn't matter, or am I going to focus on the things that I can control and change in my life? So that's kind of my viewpoint. But as far as like the whole Trump thing and whatnot, I preferred Vivek Ramsey. That was
Ramaswamy.
my how's it
Ramaswamy, I believe.
Ramaswamy. Okay,
Yeah,
yeah.
very good.
So I loved what he had to say. Like, I felt like he was. I don't know. He seemed like a stand-up guy to me, and smart guy. As far as the whole thing with, I didn't really want to see Trump take the top spot. simply because I know the chaos that it's going to cause. And as far as Trump, like I said, I was a fan when I read his book back then. But I do think that he suffers from the same problem that Andrew Tate does, which is sometimes saying things, even though he's got great ideas. And I know he's not a racist or a bigot or any of things. I know that he's a great guy. But sometimes the way that he words things comes across in an untactful way, which rubs people the wrong way. And I know some of it he does on purpose in order to rile things up, but that makes him less effective because people who would support him, like for example, Vivek, I'm going to say it wrong, Ramaswamy. Did I say it right?
Ramaswamy, I think. I'm not saying I'm an expert
Ramaswamy.
either, but it's something like
Okay.
that.
Okay. Like I
Just say
think that he
Vivek.
shares a lot of the same kind of ideas and views, not all of them as Trump, but the way that he presents it to people that disagree with him doesn't feel as much like a slap in the face. Again, based on this election, do I want Trump to win? Of course. I think, yeah, like definitely not Biden. But at the same time, it's like, I know there's going to be turmoil and chaos, and it's just, it's not going to be a good climate, and there's going to be downstream effects from that. But I don't know, like people are getting, and also what's happening too, in my opinion, is that Trump's smart, right? I mean, the guy is like, whatever people say, they're wrong. Like a guy that is that wealthy and that successful in life is a smart guy. Okay. And they're falling right into his trap because he is setting it up where he's becoming a martyr. So he's making some smart moves. Like in my opinion, I think they're calculated moves, and I think he will win unless it's rigged again. I do feel like the last election was rigged in the U.S. So I know that's
Amazing. I was
you
going
might
to
have
ask
to
you
cut
maybe
that out.
about that, but yeah, when you said it, if you vote, it doesn't matter either. I was going to say because it was rigged, but I was going to say it as a joke, but you mean it. So yeah, I mean it as well. So we've
Yeah,
clarified
yeah.
that.
I don't know if you have to cut that out for YouTube
Yeah,
or
I don't
for
know
listeners,
anymore.
but I don't know. I don't know.
I'm
Like
just
that's
saying it now.
but,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, but I think it's true. I think it is like true. I watched on election night and I was like, there's no way. This is just ridiculous. So.
There's no way. Yeah, and there's no way they'd let him win. I mean, but will they let him? I don't know. That's the question. Will they let him, or will they just do anything to stop him? They'll try and put him in prison. I'm worried. Yeah, what will they do? Maybe this will look silly, when if he's not assassinated or put in prison. But they're certainly doing everything they
Well,
can.
well, and here's the thing, like, because a lot of people, they hear this stuff and they're like, oh, conspiracy theorists and all this stuff, right? And I'm like, look, I got two arguments for people against that, right? The first one is Snowden. Okay. Like, if anyone is like, no, there's no conspiracy going on, did you forget about Snowden already? Did you forget the entire US government was spying on everybody with top secret software that like tapped into every phone and have a database of everything? And that was a long time ago. Imagine what is that now. So that's number one, is like, if you're like, oh, you're just conspiracy theorists. Okay. And then the second one is Epstein. Look, the guy, I have to watch the words I say, but ended his adventure in a prison cell. The most notorious man, the most guarded, with the most, like, come on. Like,
Very
do not
unlucky.
try and tell me that when you believe conspiracy theories, you're crazy at this point. At this point, shit's going on. It is reasonable to assume shit's going on. Like, that's, I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's my defense for that, because I know a lot of people are like, you're being conspiracy about the election and all this stuff. Look, explain Snowden, explain Epstein to me, and then I'll believe you. But it doesn't add up to me.
Yeah. One question I sometimes ask in that context is, people say, did they rig the election? My question that I like to ask is, would they if they could? And 100% yes. You ask, do the Democrats respect the Constitution and the rule of democracy and so on, or would they just do anything they could to destroy their opponent? Yes, obviously they would. So for me, it doesn't become a moot point, but it becomes, or academic, but it becomes, interesting. They would definitely do that to Trump if they could. It's just a question of, did they have the logistics in place? I always find
Right.
that bothers me. People might disagree with my premise and say, well, no, they wouldn't. But of course they would. I mean,
Of course they would. Of course, yeah.
so
Yeah, because and one of the things that I have against the liberal kind of woke agenda is that they firmly believe, and I do believe that a lot of people that believe this believe that they're doing good. I truly believe that, like, people are not evil. They're not just dumb, evil, whatever. Like, they lack awareness. But the problem I have, and I think I think there's two philosophies that are deadly that they believe. The first one is utilitarianism, which is that the best good for the most people is the right way to go. And then the way they enforce utilitarianism, which is through, it's kind of the same thing, but the ends justify the means. Those two things have caused more damage in history than any other philosophy, because they're just plain wrong, right? Because if you allow the ends, and that's exactly what you're saying, is like, I know that they would rig the election if they could, because they believe that the ends justify the means, right? And when you believe the ends justify the means, there's nothing you won't do in order to get the end. And again, that goes right into utilitarianism, because you're like, okay, well, it'll be worth it if we, even if we have to do something bad in order to get a good result, it'll be worth it. And once you've sacrificed your principles, there's nothing that holds them into, like, a man in society has to be built on principles. Principles have to be unchanging. If you don't have that, you don't have anything. And that's the biggest problem I have with the left, the woke left.
Yeah, it's perhaps the difference between principles and ideology. Conservative, we may have principles, but we try not to have a rigid ideology. Whereas, yeah, if you have something like Stalin, that comes from an end justifies the means idea. You start with like, oh, we're doing good, we're redistributing wealth. It's like, oh, we're killing millions of people, but don't worry, And then people still justify it to this day. And there's the old line: socialism's never been properly tried, and all that. They cling to this because they believe the end justify the means. They have this beautiful vision of the world, very dangerous. Though
Yeah.
I have to counter my own question and say, would the Republicans do the same to Biden now? I would have said no in the past. I would have said no. Actually, there are some principles on the conservative side that they would have fair elections. Now I don't know anymore because it's war now, basically. So who knows? Would you keep Biden out if you could illegally? I don't know. I'm not sure anymore what would happen. Because it's
Yeah.
just you guys are almost at the point of just all out war.
I think the issue is, like, I think most conservatives would not accept that, because they believe that they did it first, then so now I think you might be right in that, but which is again, it should never be that way. No one should be thinking that, again, because that's ends justify the means thinking, which is very dangerous thinking. But
Yeah,
it's crazy where we've gotten, and the internet has caused all this, because there's so many thought silos and magnification of echo chambers and all these things. That's crazy. It's so divisive today. It's amazing. And it's like we're saying before, it's like people don't have dialogues. They're afraid to have, like, you have to, I know that even just in this podcast, in this interview, there's going to be people that are going to completely write off what I'm saying, simply because I didn't meet one of the criteria of their ideology,
yeah.
right? That's just how the political climate is today. And it's a sad thing, because we can't have debates, we can't have discussions anymore. We can't really make that forward progress, because it's like people are so siloed into what they believe. And it's like you're saying, it's like with the Andrew Tate, it's like, do you love him or do you hate him? And it's like, no, I respect some of the things that he says. It's like, but do you love him or do you hate him? Which one? It's like, you have to pick one. And it's like, people are so adamant about that.
Yeah, you're right. It's always unsubscribe. Love this podcast, but have to unsubscribe because of their view on Ukraine, Tate, Trump,
Right.
insert thing. I'm like, really? You have to unsubscribe because they disagree with a single thing you thought? That's completely insane.
Yeah.
That's where we
Yeah.
are. Do you see that woke? Do you see wokeness getting? Sorry to ask you loads of questions. Do you see wokeness getting worse or better? There are signs that it's kind of DEI policy is under pressure and that it's all cracking a little bit. But then again, some ways it's getting worse. We're about to have a Labour government in the UK that's going to be incredibly left wing. So I don't know. In America, it depends whether you get Trump or Biden. But will it get worse or better?
Gosh, I feel like wokeness has become a caricature of itself, right? It's like when you watch a movie now, you know what you're gonna like. It's almost comical. Like,
Yeah.
it's no longer infuriating. It's like, oh, here's the strong female character. Oh, look,
She's
there's a
beating up
white guy
Jack
and a black
Reacher.
guy and a Chinese guy, and it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
oh wow, look at that. And it's become such that it's so comical that it doesn't even make the point anymore. You know what I mean? So, I think in that way, it's reducing. Like, I think that there's less of that. I think there's a big Andrew Tate backlash, which kind of set us back, unfortunately, because now so many people are like, oh, so angry at Andrew Tate for no reason, because they don't even understand him anyway. And now they're like doubling down on the wokeness. This is why we can't have masculinity. And this is why, like, you know what I mean? Even the algorithms have shut out, a lot of videos talking about that thing or anything positive for masculinity. So there is that aspect. I mean, there's a war that's being fought here, and the worst place is the tech industry. That's where I came from, and I got canceled on Twitter in the tech industry. I had all my courses pulled from a big company, Pluralsight, where I was making. I mean, I was pulling in royalty checks of $100,000 every 3 months on my courses, and they all got pulled. My book got unpublished by the publisher, right? So I went through the cancel in 2019 on Twitter, and it was a complete setup. Like there's professional woke activists that were purposely like collecting, egging it on and pushing it out and pushing the cancellation agenda. So it's like it's professionally done. Like it is a thing that is an actual agenda. So I don't know. I think that, like I said, the tech industry is, even if you were to look into tech industry today, it is extreme. It is completely 100% diversity, 100% pronouns, 100% everything is all about that. And the problem with that is that this was strategic. Okay. And I'll tell you why. It started with Evergreen College. That was the testing ground for this. And after that, it went to the tech industry, and the tech industry controls social media. And that was the plan. Because now, if you take over the tech industry with wokeness, social media, that's everybody's feeds. That's, you get to control everything. And now it's hit mainstream society. And I think there's enough of a backlash where it's kind of kept it at bay to a degree. But I don't know. It's a scary time, because that kind of stuff, if you're familiar with like what happened in Evergreen
Brett
College.
Weinstein and all that.
Mm-hmm,
Hmm.
mm-hmm.
When he was banned
And
from
how that,
campus,
yeah,
Jewish liberal
and just how that,
professor banned from campus.
and it's like the person who controls the vocabulary controls the society. And you have these vocabulary words like whiteness and what is it, like tone deaf, and like there's a whole vocabulary on this thing. I'm sure you're aware of it. And it's scary, because it is not accident. It is engineered. It's specific to undermine society. Like there are people behind this that are purposely, because it is an agenda. It is a specific thing. And again, a lot of people are like conspiracy theory, but no, it is. If you see it, and you saw it from Evergreen College, I was watching it when it first happened, and then it spilled into the tech industry, and you see how it's systematically been taking over society. It is a plan.
What did you say, by the way? Did you say women should submit? Why did you get cancelled in 2019?
So the story is, I didn't even get on Twitter, honestly, right? It's like, I was big in the programming space with several books published. I was pretty famous in that space, and in a big blog, a couple 100,000 page views a month. And I had a podcast and stuff, and there was this girl that was on my podcast once, and she was a girl developer, and there was someone messaged me, and they're like, they're attacking her on Twitter, right? And they were attacking her. It was a woke like attack on her. Like they're threatening to essentially cancel her and tell her employer, because she said something like, with all the diversity and inclusion, sometimes it's a little bit rough getting into the tech industry, or it seems like some people are. It was some really just blah comment, like nothing a big deal, but they were going to like threaten her whole career over that. So I was like, what, fuck this. I got nothing better to do. Let me jump on there and let me just tell these bastards what kind of pussies they are. So I'm like, you're a pussy. And again, it wasn't the smartest thing for me to do, but I just started like attacking everyone that was attacking her, because like I got nothing to lose. I'm financially independent. What are you going to do to me? I don't have a job. Like you can come after her job, but I'm going to divert the focus to me. And well, I did have more to lose than I thought. I didn't realize how crazy it was going to be. So they're like screenshotting. Like there was a woman that responded to me, and I said, shut up. Right. And then someone replied, like, how dare you tell a woman to shut up? And I was like, shut up. And then that gets screenshotted. And then I talked to a black girl, and they're like, I said something about someone being acting like animals. And then they're like, they take a picture of a black girl. And then that I said, like, they constructed this whole thing about me being a racist, sexist, right? And again, I wasn't saying nice things, right? I take responsibility. I was saying mean things on Twitter, okay, but I'm not racist. I wasn't saying racist things. I wasn't saying sexist things. Again, I guess what I say now, people could interpret as sexist, but if you listen to everything I'm saying and not a soundbite, you understand that I love women. I don't hate women. I don't have anything against them. So anyway, they constructed this whole thing, and just like this nice screenshot of everything I said out of context that made it look like I was the perfect racist, and they sent it to all the companies, and boom.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've been there on a smaller scale. How? I know it's a lot. It's a big question, but very. If you can answer it very quickly, because I've taken up so much of your time. But how do you think we can win the culture war then? But it's we're quite kind of on the same side from what you've said. We're engaging it in a different way, but how do we win?
Yeah. So it's back to the what's his name? I can't forget I can't remember his name now, but he passed away, but he was on, I had him on one of my podcasts, but he wrote the book, Strong Men, create,
Oh, create good times,
yeah, good
etc.
times, create weak men create hard times. Right. And that's the answer. That's it. The answer is like, as much as we want to like complain about society and all this stuff, we're not going to change it by complaining about it. It doesn't even, it's like, even if you have like, look, an election can even be rigged, right? So that doesn't even matter, right? So the answer is to create strong men. The answer is, that's why I'm focusing on masculinity, right? Is because if we can get young men to grow up and to take responsibility and start being men of character and value, that step up, that take good care of women, that again, stop hating on women, because you're not going to convince a woman to not be feminist by telling her what a stupid bitch she is. That's not, how's that going to work? Like, it's like, oh, you're a hoe. Like, no, that's never going to work. She's never going to be like, oh, you're right, I'm a hoe, I should stop being a hoe. Never in the history of society has that ever fucking worked, right? So we got to get men that stand up and show the examples of good masculine men that take care of women, take care of society, take care of their children, have respect, show respect, show kind, who have a backbone, who are strong men, but have empathy and caring and show love, and aren't afraid to do that. And as we do that and we encourage those men and grow up those men, that's what will shift it, because because that will get women, that will change women. Because if men stepped up and were the kind of men that that could be that magnet, right? Because we have the strength as men because we are influential, and that magnetic induction. But if you apply that to the greater scheme of things, you'll flip it. You'll flip it. It will flip like that. But it's not going to be through the way that we're doing it now. It's not going to be through you know rallying and screaming as loud as we can about how fucked up it is. That it's just not going to work. It's not going to happen that way. It only creates more divisiveness. It only creates more of a separation, and makes people more stringent in their own stance. So the answer is to look internally. The answer is one man at a time. It's not to try and correct society at large. It's got to start with you as an individual, and then the men that you're around, and us teaching men how to be men.
All right, very cool answer. So, what a great podcast! It's one of the all-time great podcasts. But where do you see yourself going then? You've had Bulldog Mindset, 363,000 last I checked subscribers. You've been incredibly successful, real estate, all the things you've talked about, programming. But now you've kind of, it's maybe a luxury problem, some would say, but you've sort of achieved everything. And I've been watching your videos lately, and it's like, oh, what do I do now? I'm not sure where
Yeah.
to go next. So where do you see yourself going?
I've been trying to figure that out, and I think honestly, it's like what we talked about today on this podcast. It's like I want to help men in relationships to be better men, because that, I think that encompasses all the things, right? Because it involves being a better man, and learning to be more masculine in the right way. And so I'll probably do that through Bulldog Mindset, through my membership. I'm revamping that, and I'm going to kind of relaunch that, and get men in there that need help, getting help with fitness, finance, with kind of dating issues, kind of the basic and the mindset. And then I'm thinking about, like, I really enjoy the podcast I'm doing with my wife on the Better Than Perfect podcast. And so uh, I think from there I want to launch a program, a relationship coaching for men, to help them to have the better relationships, to realize what impact that they have through and it really, and the reason why I think that's such an important focus is because, again, like I said, is like, look at the impact that a man has, right? Because if you're a man and you're married to a woman, and you through your magnetic induction make that woman more feminine, bring out the feminine in her, right? Then she's the one who raises your children, and those children learn these values, right? And those children grow up, and then that next generation is going to be a generation of kids who understand, who have principles, who understand the value of men and women and their roles in society. And so that's why I think that it begins at the man in the relationship, because the man in the relationship has the most influence, because he influences the woman and he influences her on how she ends up raising his children. And that's a huge impact, and that's where I feel like I can make the biggest difference. So that's, again, I've been confused, it's been a lot of soul searching and stuff, but that's what I'm passionate about, and that's what I keep coming to, and that's where it's like I think things are leading me to that, because it's like, yeah, I can teach you how to be an alpha male and pick up girls, and yeah, that's great, but what does that really do for society? It doesn't do much. Maybe it even contributes to the problem to a degree, right? So I think the bigger focus is being the man in the relationship, because if you can do that, you can make the biggest impact.
All right. Excellent answer. Thanks so much for your time. Great podcast. Thanks for all the work you do. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can go to bulldogmindset.com, and from there I've got my Bulldog Mindset program. You can go on YouTube and search for Bulldog Mindset. I've got a new channel, Bulldog Mindset V2, where I'm doing daily videos. And then my newest thing is my video podcast with my wife called Better Than Perfect. It's a relationship podcast. If you search for that, you can find it. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. Brilliant. Thanks so much for your time, John. And yeah, and if you want to support me, of course, go to buymeacoffee.com/Nick Dixon. Buy me a digital coffee and you leave a comment. I reply to all the comments. Buymeacoffee.com/Nick Dixon or nickdixon.substack.com, where I'm posting loads more articles, partly because John told me to. nickdixon.substack.com for all my articles. £5 a month. Great deal. So that's my little plug in as well. And thanks again, John.
Yeah, thank you. And I just have to say real quick, go visit the Substack, Nick's Substack. It's fantastic. He's a fantastic writer. You will definitely get a kick out of the articles. Obviously he's got a great sense of humor as well, so it's well worth it. And and for also keeping media like this on the air, I think it's important to support the creators, because this is valuable work that you're doing, Nick, and I appreciate it. So.
Awesome. Great plug from John. Thank you very much. nickdixon.substack.com. Bulldog Mindset. Go and find John. And cheers. We'll see you again next week.